we are never truly lost. Well, okay, sure, maybe we get turned around for a few days in the woods, where life just feels like it's getting the best of us, and everything's going wrong. And I'm Mike Martin, and I've stood right where you're standing, lost, beaten down, like nothing's ever gonna change. And that's why I built this camp. And that's why I'm inviting you to join me and all the members of this wild community. Because you know what, friend? It does get better. So come along with me into the wild and let me show you this awesome, unique skill set that lays within inside of you. With help from the land, we're gonna unlock the steward that's inside each and every one of us that will lead the way out of the darkness and into healing. Here at the Camp of Healing on Project Mindfully Outdoors.
It's not about the countless miles that you've traversed, nor is it about the title that you hold at work. And it's not even about the numbers that are on the last bank statement that you received in the mail. Because none of these things make up who or what you are. And what you are is human, just like each and every one of us. And there's a common thread that binds each of us humans. Our thirst for knowledge. And there's no better teacher to quench that thirst than for Grandmother Earth herself and all that dwell upon her grounds. The trees, the wind, the water. It's as simple as going down to a river or into a forest and putting your feet in there. It's as simple as that. Just taking a stroll through the forest and resting your hand upon a mother tree. Listen to what happens inside of you. There's a trigger of a spiritual awakening that frees up the wisdom that once sat covered up within you. At any given moment, that sense of internal strength and wisdom may feel as though it's no longer within you, as you do battle with the rigors of daily life. But once you turn down the volume of the concrete world, you leave an open space between your ears and your heart. What's left within you is the ability to hear, and your heart picks up and hears the spirits that are all around you. So hold on to that, because their inspirational songs can be heard everywhere, no matter where you stand. And they are always singing to your heart to remind you that the strength and the wisdom that you need to muster to meet this moment on its terms is always deeply rooted within you. All you have to do is listen to that song.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this week's show. As always, I'm your guide through the wild world of meditation, Mike Martin. And boy, I'll tell you, it feels good to be back in the office, to be able to sit down and record episode 346. I just got back this morning from giving a wilderness meditation presentation for an event back on Monday to do with the eclipse, which, that was a lot of fun. It was a very, very amazing experience to get to spend the day immersed in both healing and Mother Nature, and then turn around the next day and make a nice long 5-hour drive back home. When all was said and done, in all reality, there was a lot of time in the car to sit with my thoughts and, reflect on not only the events of the weekend, but also kind of where I've ended up today at this point in my journey. And that's where today's meditation came together, actually. I don't know. I find it kind of funny sometimes how, the writing aspect is a key component of what I do, but that urge or that desire just seems to at times come out of nowhere. And when that happens, it's like a call that you just can't ignore and turn around. You can't put it down, but you just kind of have to roll with it. And sometimes some of the pieces that I put together end up with an amazingly interesting backstory, to say the least. I mean, today's meditation was just simply written, at a gas station parking lot as I sat around for a little bit right before daybreak and just kind of felt compelled to put that together. But that's one thing about the podcast journey that I really, truly enjoy, is when I get the opportunity to sit down with other authors or writers who put together and produce these beautiful pieces of work. And I get to hear about how their creative process works. We've all got our different little niches and our different little ways of doing things. And that's something that to me is very intriguing to be able to explore. And that's what I have the opportunity to share with you today. Now, see, recently I got a hold of a copy of this book that's entitled My Name is Love. And it was written by Troy Hadeen. And I'd really like to tell you that this book is very beautifully written. And I highly recommend it, because if you grab yourself a copy, you sit down and you take that journey with Troy, I'm telling you, it's going to leave you in a much better place than where you began. And that's pretty much the way this conversation came together and, just decided to flow and work out, is that me and Troy had the opportunity to connect one evening while I was out on the trail. And we just kind of walked this path together that was absolutely beautiful. And I feel like it'll take you, the listener, on a very special and insightful journey that's going to help you to, not only evaluate where you stand in life, but also how much you're applying yourself to go forward. So on that note, I'm going to kick it over to a word from our sponsor. And on the flip side of that, I give you my conversation and my journey with the amazing Troy Hadeen. I'll talk to you on the flip side.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at My Medic. And as you know, this is a partnership that means a great deal to me, because there's so much authenticity within their mission of providing state-of-the-art first aid equipment and putting the power in your hands when those events arise that are so dispowering. Listen, we all love walking around thinking that emergencies will never happen to us. However, My Medic was founded on an event that cost their loved one their life because they were unprepared. So don't make the same mistake. Buy now
and live later. And when you visit mymedic.com, use promo code PROJECTOUTDOORS15 to save yourself 15% on your entire order. So swing over to mymedic.com and use promo code PROJECTOUTDOORS15 right now. All right, Troy. This is new uncharted territory for me. Usually, I'm the only one that's sitting on the ground.
Yeah, yeah.
So, we had a couple of minutes there before we hit record to touch base and get warmed up and fired up. And I think this is going to be a really great conversation. But before we even jump into anything, you got
Yeah.
to talk to me a little bit about what inspired this book that you wrote.
What inspired the book that I wrote? Oh man. Well, I first of all I'll say that we have this thing in the world where we have the idea that for instance, that I wrote this book. And there's a great Indian saint, and I'm not big on saints and gurus, but he always said, stop lying to people. He said, I do nothing. The I, as I know it, does nothing. And God does everything through me. And we mentioned that we were talking about this large intelligence just now, whatever someone wants to call that. And I believe that is what does everything through us. But I will answer your question and tell you what inspired this book. Um, and it is that, when I was really young, Mike, I was in my 20s, I knew I would write a book one day, and it had never really came together. I don't think back then I would have been in a position to write a book I have now. But what inspired it is that I feel that the world we live in, not only that it's breed separation, but that is what we're fed. From the second we're born, we're given a name. This body has a name. It's called Troy. And as we go along our lives, Troy begins to get aspects of identity. He's light-skinned, he's of Arab descent, he's straight, he believes A, B, and C, while Mike might believe X, Y, and Z. He identifies with certain things. But here's the thing, everything we identify with that revolves around my physical body makes me separate. It makes me different from someone else, if not everyone else. And I think we have this, we need to start to dissolve that in our society, because I, for one, don't want to live in a world where we're separate. I don't want to live in a world where all I am is this physical body. I choose to live in a world and believe and know how connected we really are. For me to do that, I have to move beyond my obsession with my individual identity. That, for one, is why a book is called My Name is Love. Because love and spirit or God are the only things that I, for one, can truly identify. Because it's the one thing that connects all of us. Like you were just talking about there, what you experience when you're out there in the field, and what you feel and the energy you feel, and that energy, whatever that is bigger than the individual, is the one thing that makes Troy and Mike the same. It's the one thing that reminds us all that we are part of one whole. And what I find happening in the world today, and this lends the way a direction of the book, is that we get really caught up in our identity, in this I, me, and all the things we believe and we think is right and in alignment. And we want to be better human beings, and we talk about the right things, and we repost the right things on social media, and we try to adopt these philosophies. But I feel like what's lacking is we're not looking at our lives and asking, where can I be better? Where am I out of alignment? What is this teaching, or whatever it is that I believe in, what does it actually mean in my life, and where am I not embodying it, you know? Or how does it create separation and division in the world and society? And I just feel like in order for us to remember and understand what it really means to love, we have to start to get over our sense of identity, opinion, righteousness. I'm right all the time. My alignment is right alignment, you know. And we need to start to get over that, to remember how connected we are and remind ourselves what it really means to love. I guess in a nutshell, that would be my inspiration for a book.
To me, it sounds like a life journey, collected into this body of work that is out there, ends up in the hands of a lot of people that read it. And yeah, their motivations are true and, sincere. I want to pick up a book and start going down these self help trails and learn all these things. But without really taking the time to dissect what it is that you wrote and think about it from a third person point of view, you really miss the opportunity to step away from the fear of having those hard questions with
Yeah.
and answers, that hard dialogue with yourself. It's really hard to truly, authentically be able to not only body the terms that you put on whatever, whatever the said situation may be.
Yeah. I lost you there for a little bit, Mike. Can you repeat that last part for me?
Did I lose you there?
Yeah, you lost me briefly.
Without taking, gotcha.
Yeah.
Without taking that time to, oh yeah, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Oh, I
Okay. I
was
know we're
there.
having a lot of,
Yeah.
so that's probably got a lot to play with it. And being out here in the country doesn't help. But you
Yeah.
know, the whole point that I was getting at with where I was going is if we don't take the time to not only read and digest and say a third person view in order to really grasp what it is that author is trying to share with us, we lose that ability to dig into those hard questions because we still dance around the shadows of fear.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And it's so important as well, Mike, that like I would not want anyone to read my book or read that book and just adopt what it says or agree with all of it. I want them to question it. I want them to question, what does this mean for me in my life? And I think that inner journey, that introspection is where so much of the power lies. But I think, again, one of the big problems in our world is that no one's taking that time. You know, we're all on this wheel. We're trying to tick these check boxes. We're trying to meet our responsibilities and pay our bills, and we're always rushing through time all the time. And when we're not rushing, a lot of times we're indulging in patterns of avoidance. But how often do we sit with ourselves or take the time to be alone with ourselves, like even like you are in nature, and actually to listen and connect to source and see what comes up, and to ride on your point of fear? Most people are afraid to do that because they're so afraid of what comes up for them, you know?
It's very true. And one thing that I've learned through my journey and through the work that I've invested, especially, over the past few years, is that it's changed my perception of coming out into the wilderness and spending time alone on the trailer, at night in the tent. Because before it was a lot of, not, I guess you could actually say outright fear of sitting with yourself because
Yeah.
you're afraid of what comes up. And then when you start to take inspiration from, a book like the one that you wrote, you start to see, that cloud of fear really isn't as big as I think that it is. In reality, when it rains, the rain cloud is only so big. The atmosphere and the blue sky that sits above it is much, much bigger than that rain cloud, but the vision is obscured. And in order to be able to see that blue sky again, you have to wait the storm out. Well, when it's an internal thing that you're trying to wrestle with, there's not necessarily going to be that gust of wind that blows that cloud from over the top of your head. You have to do the work to create the energy that's going to push that cloud away.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. 100. And what's also interesting is I remember I tell this story in the book as well because fear, we keep coming back to fear, right?
Right.
And to me, it's so important that we start to look at our fears and understand our fears because then that's the only way we can overcome them. And fear is a hindrance to love. Even more so, I mean, we could go into this after, but in my excavation of fear, I've come to understand that fear's greatest worry is not being able to love or be loved. How ironic is that? That even
It's a,
fear is driven by love.
it's a very ironic point that you make because when we think about love, whether it's love for ourselves, love for another human being, or even just love for, an inanimate object, we want to do everything that we can to protect it so we don't lose it.
Yeah.
And, I can't say that I've spoken to a lot of people that really work fear into that, that really equate the two, that'll say, in reality, I'm squeezing a little too tight to this relationship because I'm afraid that I'm going to lose
Yeah. And yeah, you're hitting some really good points, Mike. And not to keep referencing my book, I'm not trying to plug it, but it is inside of me, right? So it comes out. But one of my favorite lines in my book points out that you cannot truly love anything. You cannot truly love someone unless you're willing to lose them. Because if you're not willing to lose it, your love is always skewed in self-preservation and self-desire and want. Right? You want this for yourself, and you'll never be willing to let it free or let it loose or walk away from that thing that you love. And there'll always be a subtle coveting, a subtle manipulation, so you can keep this thing you love close, right?
it. Right.
And how this shows up in relationship for me is imagine that me and you were like best friends or like brothers, right? And I wanted to tell you something you needed to know and to look at to facilitate your growth and transformation as a human being. But I know that if I tell that to you, you'd possibly walk away and never talk to me for the rest of your life. But I know you need to know this, and I'm the only one that can show you what this is and lift it up for you to see. But because I don't want to lose you, I don't say anything. Rather than taking my chances that you're going to see that what I'm offering is coming from a place of love. So in that instance, I'm not loving you, but I become codependent upon you. I'm loving what your friendship gives to me, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I think that's actually a point that really a lot of us not only don't look at within our interaction first person from the relationships that we're in, but also externally. You know, the interaction with said person is we look at it more from the value that we get out of it. We don't look at those little minute things that could really help the other person grow and make that relationship that much better out of the fact that there's that self gratifying and almost self serving purpose of protecting what
yeah,
we're trying to lose. And to look at it and be completely honest about it, it turns into one of those moments where the cliche, if you love something enough, it'll come back, right?
yeah,
You just gotta throw that stone and let it land where it lands, and you just deal with the outcome as it comes at you in real
yeah.
time.
And and even if it doesn't come back, it doesn't mean you stop loving.
Right,
You know, you're still in that. You're still like part of that person. I was on a podcast the other day, and I keep referencing this podcast because it was so interesting. The guy was an atheist, and that's what his entire podcast is around. And he couldn't quite understand that I could tell him that there's no doubt in my mind that I exist beyond my body, and that when I die, I will continue to exist, that there was actually life after death. And he couldn't understand, how can I say that for truth and fact? And this is the way I see it, Mike. It's like, it's impossible for Troy and Mike to leave this conversation, or our listeners, as the same people that came into it. Because we've now changed, we've now shared, right?
right.
So I will now live in everything Mike does from this point on, in every conversation Mike does, and you will live in me. And through that, even when we leave our bodies, the resonance and vibration of our lives and our relationships continues to exist and contribute to the evolution of human consciousness and the world we live in. So when like recently I just came out of a relationship, and I had to let that person go. And I still love them daily, daily. And I know that even if I don't get the opportunity to maintain a friendship with that individual, that I have loved them, and whether they recognize it or not, I will always be living with them and in them and them with me. And I think that just it brings so much more power to and responsibility to the way we live our lives, you know, to know that no one is left the same even after the briefest interaction with us. So what kind of impact do we want to have? You know?
You know, I think that that really brings a lot of light on the idea of finding a tribe, of the people that you communicate and you commune with on a regular basis. Whether you realize it or not, you're each learning from each other back and forth throughout the whole process. And yeah, we're never intended to actually stay stagnant, stay the same. There's
Yeah,
changes that are going on every second of every day. That's part of what makes the story of life such a beautiful thing. When you start to celebrate that, though, when you start to really enjoy and look at and feel not only the energy but the connection, that's where the value of these tribes and of these communities really sincerely grabs your heart and
yeah,
encourages you to feel alive.
yeah. Absolutely. There's also, I agree with you 100, Mike, and there's also a danger to tribes, at least from where I sit, because I know how powerful community is, and that's what a tribe is, community, right? And it is so fundamental to purpose and human existence and inspiration and feeling like we have a place and a support system in the world. But I feel like often, and I know this is not what you are speaking to, but I feel like we need to mention it in case people get caught up a lot of the time with this idea of tribe. And that idea of tribe often becomes part of our identity. And whether we realize it or not, we start, our tribe separates us from someone else's tribe. And our tribe might live life in a certain way and believe certain things. But then what happens is we start to see everyone else who lives their life differently and believes something else, almost like that's a separate tribe. So we live our lives and let them live their lives, and we'll just mind our own business. And it creates a subtle separation and otherness in you, where it's important for us to remember that everyone else's tribe is also our tribe. That for us to just walk away from all the other tribes or mind our own business and not really take up responsibility associated with them, to me would be partial avoidance, because we are so interconnected, you know?
You know, I love how you grabbed that ball and ran with it. I set that one up beautifully for you without you even looking directly at it. That was well done, well played. But yeah, you're absolutely correct, because if you look at every single ordeal throughout history, with different cultures, different tribes, and so on and so forth, that were there one day, next day they had this problem, and then they were gone.
Yeah,
Think about all the different things that were lost because they became just a dusty record within the history of time.
yeah,
And, we find ourselves now as a society looking at those things that were lost and wondering how they really worked. Because we look at, indigenous people in different countries, and we say, in comparison to what we have going on now, he might have been onto something. But because generations ago we were impatient, we didn't want to take the time to learn everything from them that they were willing to show us. Here we are now trying to backpedal.
yeah. And I don't know if backpedaling is possible, Mike. Um, I'm a very hopeful, sorry, I don't like to live in hope. I like to refer to faith. And I have faith that humanity will find its way. And because what choice do I have? You know,
Well,
I could live in hope, and I could look at the world and talk about how doomed we are and that we'll never make it through and the world is a bad place. But to me, it's like we can't reverse the past, right?
right,
What's done was done. And I do believe, like you're out there in the wilderness, and we were talking before we hit record about this energetic thing that we feel that we can tap into, whatever you want to call it. And I think we still have the ability today to tap into whatever our ancestors of the past tapped into. But we just need to slow down a little bit and do exactly what you're doing now, I think, which is spend some time alone and just dial into it and really ask your hard questions. And as as hard and dark as the world seems at times, I just choose to have faith that we're going to find a way and that there is a large intelligence through that is moving through us. that this human experience has been crafted intentionally by this intelligence, and that we've come here to learn and grow, but sometimes it's uncomfortable and it seems like an absolute shit show.
See, here's the thing that I think of as I listen to you speak is my whole project and really my whole journey that I've been on for the past few years was sparked by just a random event. I mean, the circumstances around it as far as getting in my truck, turning on a podcast that I was so used to listening to religiously. That was a given. However, the guest that just happened to be on a hunting based podcast, a philosopher, and the things that he had to say, those were put there by that divine force.
Yeah,
Just for the circumstances and just literally press and play and here you go. Here's that verbal smack in the face that you need. And I believe that this is kind of one of those conversations, because this is going to get posted on the podcast and whatnot. And a lot of people that come across it, they'll turn it on because it's regularly what they listen to. You know, however, they dive into the conversation, and there's going to be that little nuance that was so different than any other thought process. And that right there, I believe, is kind of how this whole avenue of a great spirit, a creator, a great mystery, even a God, if you will,
yeah,
really, really ties us all together. You don't have to
yeah,
be consciously aware of it. You don't necessarily have to be consciously looking for it.
yeah,
Sometimes the most valuable and important moments that you're going to ever encounter in your life happen because you stumble into them. And when you
yeah,
do that, when it pulls you onto this path that really puts you in places that you never expected to be. I mean, for myself, for as an example, yeah, being out here in the woods, that was natural. That was always something that I've done forever. It's calming, it's soothing. However, building this career around being a wilderness meditation guide and taking people out hiking and really impactfully having a puzzle piece for their life and their journey, helping them go forward. That was something that I never thought about. That was something that I never intended to happen till I had my very own moment. And it's almost like one of those you stand here with an empty cup, and then that energy, that source fills your cup to the point that it overflows. And then whatever that mission is that you've been drafted for just starts to pour out of you and it
yeah,
starts to impact.
yeah,
And
yeah, that's it.
the other ironic part about that, when I think about those moments, is when I hit play and I heard the podcast start, I could have either turned it off, I could have rolled the windows down, turned the volume way down, and not even thought about it. However, all of those wheels set in motion because I was open to it on some kind of level.
Yeah,
And you, me, and every other human being that's here now came before us and is yet to come still has that receptor, no matter where you're at in life. You can be as down and out and hopeless as words can't even describe, but that receptor is still
yeah, yeah. I like to speak to it. That's beautiful, Mike. I like to speak to it as imagine that we have a voice of a mind, and then you have a voice of a heart. And the voice of the heart is tuned to the frequencies of God, the spirit. You could call it intuition, you could call it a gut feeling, you could call it whatever you want, I don't really care. But it's this thing that we just know we have to do. And it's not always logical. Sometimes it sounds like it's absolutely insane. And the voice of your mind is what tells us, well, what if? But, what will people say? What will people think? What's going to happen? How are you going to get back home? What do you mean you're going into the woods? Right? The voice of the mind is also driven by our preservation of this body, by ourself, our place in the world. And as you would know as a meditation guide, right? In most people, the voice of the mind, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It just has so much noise, so much to say. But there have these moments in time, and if we create a relationship with the mind and we can quiet that voice of the mind a little, that's when we open up this frequency to the voice of the heart, where we can, it lands and we're like, huh, that's crazy, I can't do that. And then it hits you again, you're like, you have to. You don't have a choice. And you just know you got to do what you got to do. Like maybe in that moment, that voice of your heart would tell you, you got to listen to this podcast. And then it came again and said, you're going to start your own podcast. And I'm sure for you, you had moments where you're like, what? That's a crazy idea. You can't do that, you know?
Absolutely. You know, I'm thinking about what you said too in context to a lot of what I do. You know, just showing up on a trail, grabbing a pen and a notebook and going out to write for days on end. And all you got are the things that are on your back. You got, you know, obviously a tent, something to sleep in, you got a sleep system, food, water, all the basics, right? And
Yeah.
you do that because the goal is to obviously not drain yourself by carrying too much weight. And to bring that into life, as crazy as that may sound to somebody, if you just simply looked at the things that you were carrying, you sat down, in our case, on the floor as such, and you know, you had that grounding area. You realize how much of the things around you you honestly don't need. And one of the things that I've learned from these adventures is that where we're sitting now on Grandmother Earth, she's here to support us. You know, she's here to carry us. And within her wisdom and her knowledge of just that job alone, there's an understanding that she has that as human beings, we're not designed to carry all that excess weight.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Grandmother Earth is much wider, much more firm and strong than we are. So, as a part of her compassion and caring for us as a creature on her, you know, on top of her, she feels it's her duty to take those things from us, to carry them for us.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an amazing story I'll share with you, Mike, that I think it also comes back to fear. So a man where fear comes from, right? And I think it might be an amazing way to loop cycle back. But right now, the house you see me in, it's a pretty nice house, pretty well done in a beautiful space in a forest. Right now I'm in a forest, but I'm in this beautiful greenhouse house. Now, before I've lived in this house now for 4 or 5 years, but before that, I lived in a tree house for 6 years. And the tree house was on the same lot of land in a forest. Now, right now, if I were to go outside and scream, there's no one else to hear me. So I'm alone in the forest. And to put this into context, I grew up in a city. I'm a city boy. And when I was looking for land outside in nature, I came to this lot of land, and there was a voice that told me, you need to live here. You're going to live here. You need to buy it. So I did. Everyone thought I was an absolute lunatic, right? So, long story short, we built this little tree house. I had some guys come from the area and they built this little tree house, board house, no real windows, no doors, completely exposed, a hammock, a bed. And my very first night there, Mike, I was pretty much shitting myself. I'm a city boy. I've been in the bush and so on. But this is like I'm alone in the darkness, in the forest, in jungle of pretty much South America. And I'm like, I'm by myself. I'm like, and then the sun sets and then the nocturnal animals come out. And I was in such a state of overcome with fear at one point, overcome with fear, that I didn't recognize. All I perceived was threats around me, noises. And here we have a snake called a mapipi, which is like the most venomous snake in the Western Hemisphere. It's actually a palmetto pit viper. And it's rampant in this area where I am. So I'm freaking out. And then I lay back in my hammock and I go back to my breath. And then my entire perception begins to change, and I begin to see moon glistening on the leaves of 100-foot giant trees. I begin to see and witness all the majesty around me. My whole experience changes. But I'll tell you what was the most important thing that landed for me that night. At the beginning, I was overcome with fear because I saw myself as separate. As long as I saw myself as separate, then everything else around me became a threat because I was trying to preserve my identity, my body. That was my priority. At all costs, I had to preserve this. So everything else around me that was unfamiliar, I perceived as a threat. But the second I remembered that I'm not separate from it, I'm a part of it, that I am part of everything that surrounds me, then fear began to dissolve. Because I no longer have anything to be afraid of. I am a part of this magical natural world. And my role in it is just part of the cycle. And I think so much of the time we perceive man as separate from nature. And we forget that we're not separate from each other. We are part of it. And I think that's so important for us to remember,
I think that that's actually something that has been instilled within generation after generation, is that as a human, you're entitled. This is our world. This is our land. We get to do whatever we want because we are the top of the food chain. However, some of the greatest teachings that I've read through different Native American books and, soul searching and actually getting out there and really experiencing the same kind of fear and the same kind of instincts is nobody is entitled to being at the top of the food chain. Because if you think about the apex predator, you think about the bear, no matter where it is, he's still at risk for something, you know? And it's the same for us, whether it's
Yeah.
dangers and fears that we have built around us from the outside world, other human beings in the concrete jungle that we live in, or it's fears that we build within our own mind through stories and, you know, conjuring up and carrying past events, past traumas, whatever it is. They're really irrelevant when you step out of the moment. You're
Yeah.
still connected to not only each and every person around you on the same level footing, but you're also connected to brothers that are on four legs, brothers that have wings,
Yeah.
brothers that swim, you know, and nature itself. trees, the ground, the whole thing. We're all here to learn from each other, and we're all here to support and love each other.
Yeah. Yeah. 100.
I think that is probably the greatest piece of wisdom that we can share in this conversation. But since I have you all warmed up now and we're kind of starting to wind down toward the end, I got to hit you with that question that I love hitting everybody with. And it goes like this: if you take the love and the fear out and put it to the side, share some wisdom and an experience that's going to motivate somebody to take that first small step.
Wow. Take love and fear aside. All right. Well, I will say this. I would say that it's so important for us to remember that sometimes it's so hard to take love out of my language. It's
I
so
had to
hard.
take that out. I had to
Yeah,
take you
yeah.
outside of the
Take
comfort
love and
zone.
fear. Yeah. So let's talk human relations. And human experience is sometimes really challenging. Relationships are really challenging. And sometimes we take things very personally and we feel like something is being done to us. Like Mike did something to me and I take it personally. But you see, I don't actually believe we are our bodies. I think we are so much more than that. And if someone can connect to that in any way, then guess what? Mike can't actually do anything to me because this is not my body and that's not actually Mike, who Mike is. But what you're looking at now is, I like to explain that we as individuals are seeds of God with a bag of conditioning. And every single person has different conditioning. So Mike, as a seed of God, can't actually do anything to me, but his conditioning can. And I can disapprove of Mike's actions and conditioning while still loving Mike, or the seed of God that lives within Mike. So what I would invite people to do is this. This is what I'm getting at. Rather than seeing one another as our conditioning, let's acknowledge each other's conditioning, but see each other as a seed of God. Because then rather than judge people and make them wrong and fight with people and be at war with one another, then we could acknowledge someone's conditioning and understand why they might act and behave in a certain way. Now, in doing that, we open up the possibility of helping them recondition or reprogram. But if I don't like Mike's conditioning, or if I don't think Mike's conditioning is in alignment, I can't help Mike recondition by judging him and making him feel separate. But I can't help Mike recondition by helping him feel seen, understood, and safe. And then helping him see a different way, well, an alternate route or approach to the world, right? And the reason I speak to this is because forgiveness is so essential in the world we live in. And I don't think we really understand it, or I don't think we're really open to it as we should be. But when we begin to recognize each other as a seed of God with a bag of conditioning, and we understand that someone's actions, perspectives, and opinions are just shaped by their conditioning, then forgiveness is no longer an option, it's inevitable. It will happen. We just may need to heal and move through certain things to understand one another, to open up that forgiveness. But it is inevitable because nothing is actually personal. And I'm sure there are people listening who have these kind of relationships in their life. We all do. And it's so important that rather than separate ourselves from each other, that we start to build a bridge to understand where each other's conditioning comes from. And then we might begin to realize that we're a lot more similar than we are different.
See, I love the way that you work through that, Troy, because I can tell that pulled you out of your wheelhouse. You know, it pulled you out of the gig that you created for yourself, which is something that we all do. You know, we all create this persona, and when we get pulled out of it, it really takes us a minute to find some kind of footing. And the direction that you spun with that was actually beautiful because a few months back, I started, well, actually, I put together this piece about starting the road of forgiveness. And for me personally, forgiveness has been one of those journeys that before I started it was probably very dumb defined to me and no idea of truly what forgiveness was about. But there's a passage in Meditations by Marcus Aurelius where he talks about the exact same thing. You know, he has the emperor of Rome at the time obviously had a lot of people that were doing a lot of bad things behind his back to him and whatever that he caught wind of. However, instead of being vengeful and being, you know, aggressive about it, he took the time to go inward and write within a journal, which ultimately became Meditations, where he talked about the fact to himself, it's how I perceive what these people have done. I shouldn't feel wronged or upset or hurt because I let these people in and they did what they did. Instead, I should just understand the fact that they tried to be what it was they thought I needed in that role. However, you can only put out an act for so long. So the wrong that they've done was just them eventually becoming themselves, and just eventually they couldn't help it. They expressed who they
Yeah.
truly were. And as I've thought about that, and I've looked at my life and my experiences, it becomes clear because it's very easy to see. Yeah, when the wrong foot or the wrongdoing was on my shoe, eventually it was just me being me. And as when it was someone else doing to me, I wanted to be bitter and angry at the time. Probably carried it too long. And you understand, you look at it and you say, that was just that person being themselves. I thought that they were going to be someone better than what they were, but that's how they impacted my story. Now I'm going to set that down. I'm going to go on. I'm not going to carry it no more. What
Yeah.
we're what we're talking about here, I feel like really comes down to that perception of the act, the conditioning, the way
Yeah.
somebody behaves towards you. If you perceive it as being painful or being wrong, well, regardless of the fact that if it goes against your values, it's wrong. But if we perceive it as hurtful and just out of pure malice, then it's going to impact us 10 times worse than if we just say, that's that's what they were, that's what happened, so be it.
Yeah. You know, consider this too, Mike. Yeah, 100%. And consider it said like this. I think it was, I forgot the author's name. But if someone knew better, they would do better. And that
Yes,
in every moment, everyone is doing the best they can with what they know, but also with what they're navigating at the time.
yes, figuring things
Like,
out in real time.
yeah, because I might know better, but because of the weight I'm carrying at this point in my life, I might not be able to do better. But the reality is that everyone is trying their best. And knowing better is a privilege. You know better because you've had the conditioning, the experiences, and the people in your life to show you how to do better. Not everyone has that. And I think sometimes we forget we might know what is in alignment, and somebody might do something else. And we assume like they should know better. But maybe they never had anyone to show them better. Maybe you are that person. You know, but everyone really is just doing their best with what they know and what they're navigating at that point in time.
Exactly. And it's where once you take that first step and you address the perception part, that's where it opens the door to the teaching.
Yeah.
So, Troy, hit me real quick with how people can get in touch with you, find out what you got going on, get a hold of the book, all that good stuff.
Yeah, my website is troyhadeed.com. That's TROYHDEED. I'm also on Instagram. That is social platform where I'm most active. And the book is available on Amazon.com. And next week on my website, I'll also be launching a really cool clothing and merchandise line that revolves around identifying with love, rather than all these other things that make us different and separate. So if anybody has questions, I am available. They can hit me up. And before we close, Mike, I just like to say, because I know as a guest, as your guest, it is an honor to be here, and I'm super grateful. But I think a lot of listeners to podcasts don't always acknowledge the work that goes into being a podcast host and building your own show. And I've got to see that through close to 100 podcast interviews now over the last year and something. So I just want to say thank you for creating this show and for giving people like me a voice and your listeners some good stuff to tune into. So I know it probably usually goes the other way around where you thank me, but I wanted to thank you.
This is very true, and you know what?
Yeah.
I appreciate it, brother. It's been great. I love sitting down and celebrating my work, and anybody else's work that is really this impactful and this powerful. So thank you very much. I mean, there was so much more that I wanted to unpack and get into with you. We'll
Yeah.
have to sit down and plan to do a part two because there's a lot more that I feel you can help everybody with.
I'm down, my brother. You just say a word and I'm in.
Great. Well, thanks for doing this. This has been great. We'll talk soon.
All right, Mike. Love. Thank you, brother.
Hey friend, fishing season is finally upon us, and we've paired with Evolution Outdoors in order to offer you a very special deal on my backpack, on the pack that I use when I hit the water. Because I use the Drift Series Sling Pack, which is rugged and designed to have easy access to whatever it is that you're carrying, so no more fishing around in pockets and trying to remember where things are at. Everything's right there for you. But if you need more room than just a sling pack, there's no need to worry because Evolution Outdoors makes the Drift Series in 3 different sizes. So you're able to tailor everything to fit your needs. You just swing over to evolutionoutdoors.com and use promo code MM10 in order to save 10% on not only the Driftline series of fishing packs, but on all the amazing products that Evolution Outdoors offers. That's evolutionoutdoors.com and promo code MM10. All right, that is it. That is all. That is the end. We've reached the end of yet another edition
a Project Mindfully Outdoors. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank Troy for providing the catalyst for yet another amazing journey through conversation and storytelling here this week. You know, I really honestly, through the adventures over just the past few months, have learned to embody and honor and respect just how important those four simple letters, LOVE, really truly are, and just how impactful upon any sort of journey, any sort of advantage, struggle, disadvantage, good time, bad time, whatever the case may be, just how vital those four letters are. But I feel much like anything, it's a spirit, it's an energy that we give birth to. Sometimes we're lucky enough to give birth to that circle or that energy, that force with another human being. And other times we have to look inward to discover that same feeling, but it's capable. It's a capable, capturable feeling that we can develop within us, within ourselves, if we put enough work and enough time and effort into it. So don't be afraid to spend time with yourself, whether that's in your, just a few minutes in your day-to-day life, or it's an outright adventure into the wilderness. Just take the opportunity and do it. Seize the moment. And that's going to do it for this week, my friends. So until next time, just remember, every journey begins with one single step. See ya.